welcome back, you guys. As you can see by the title, today we're going to go on a little bit of an interesting topic, and I'm going to do a comparison between the GSXR-600 and the Sportster S. And at first it might kind of seem like an odd comparison to do, but honestly, I think Harley is aiming at the same people who are buying the GSXR-600s when they're looking at this. So for my first topic here, I'm gonna go over price. From what I've seen online, the GSXR is MSRP is about $11,000. I think it said $11,399, but we'll just chop it up to 11, right? And the darn Sportster S is starting out at like 16 now. So there's a pretty big price gap between these two bikes, and Harley's aiming at the people who are looking for sporty bikes again. They're trying to get that younger market, which is demographically always going after sport bikes, right? So that's another good reason right there why I'm going to bring this up and do this comparison here. And I think the price difference alone is a really big thing, because the amount of bike you're getting from a GSXR versus that 1250S is kind of insane if you really think about it. The GSXR has a top end of about 160, I'm pretty sure, right out the box. The Sportster S, I could get it up to 137, but then it's limited. So that's as fast as it will go at all until you get it tuned. And as y'all have known, if you followed along, right? If there's new people here, hey, how's it going? But for everybody who's actually been here for a minute, you'll know that there's not much to choose for from when it comes to modding the Sportster S in all reality. So while that part kind of sucks, we'll get into that here in a minute. But just simply right off the top, man, price wise, the GSXR, I really have got to say, you're getting more bike for your money, and it really shows in a lot of different ways. And so I think if you're looking at getting a fast bike and fast is your idea, and you're looking for something that's going to be relatively cheap and you already have some experience, hey, that GSXR is looking really nice at a starting price of $11,000. And you know, let's not even get into the fact that when you go in, if you're buying these brand new, right, you know, the MSRP is not typically what you're buying the bike for. For what I heard, it's a little bit better in that department on the Jap bikes versus the Harleys, because Harley makes a lot of money off of the extras they add in on top of it. I'm pretty sure every dealership does, but them specifically, they're making less money essentially on or no, they're making more money on each bike because they're getting a big overhead on each bike. But the Jap bikes, they're selling so many of them that they don't necessarily need all that extra. You know, they can get by with selling the bike for a pretty decent price. And for our second topic here, we're going to go over maintenance and aftermarket support, which I almost just touched on a little bit in our prior topic there. But the aftermarket support thing is a pretty big thing, because everybody wants to customize their bike to them, and there's going to be stuff you're going to want to do to it. It's just typical. You know, I know it seems a little crazy to think that you buy a brand new bike and then dump thousands of dollars into it after buying it, but that's just the case whenever you buy motorcycles or fancy cars and stuff like that. But the GSXR has been around for a really long time, so there's a lot of aftermarket support. There's a lot of different companies that make stuff for the bike, and a lot of the bikes are really similar year-wise. from a certain year to year. Now, I'm not a Gixxer expert, so I can't tell you those exact years, but I do know that's a thing for sure with them. While as the Sportster S is really relatively new, there's a lot of companies that are beginning to try to make stuff for it, but the downside to that is there's still a lot of research and development that they have to do, and the bike's not necessarily the most popular bike to begin with, so it's expensive for not a very big turnout for them. And with it being brand new, there's not a lot of options. There's not a lot of stuff to tune it. There's not a lot of different pipes to buy. And that leads me right next to the other half of that, and it's the maintenance, right? If something goes wrong on your Gixxer because you're out there beating on it, which, hey, that's what you bought it for, right? That's what the sport bikes are for. You know, chances are you're going to find somebody who knows what they're doing for as far as fixing the bike or finding out, diagnosing, or even just getting a decent price to get it done. While is on the Sportster S, what's going to happen is if you run into issues, from what I've found and heard from some other people who had one, right? Of course, these are just people online, so I'll take it with a grain of salt. They say that the people always just kind of try to deny them and say there's not really an issue with the bike. Like, I had an issue with the bike turning off on me. When I went up there, they basically told me that there was nothing wrong with the bike, and then also informed me that there's not very many people up there at that shop who really know what they're doing. So, with that bike specifically, because of how brand new it is, which is really kind of disappointing, because they're supposed to be master level techs, Harley Davidson techs, and I get it's a brand new bike, but man, to go up there and just have people basically just look at you and basically tell you that they don't know and they can't fix it is kind of disappointing. Or it becomes a mess that's so big that it's almost just not worth the hassle of getting the bike, because of the fact that, well, if you just bought the new bike and then it starts having these issues, and then they take it back into the shop, and then you don't have your bike for months at a time because they're trying to figure it out and they don't know what they're doing and they're working their whole way through it. So I'd say the maintenance side is a little sketch itself, which is one reason why I decided to step away from the bike. I mean, even if I was okay with the bike, you know, having issues because it's a brand new, you know, engine and all that kind of weird stuff, and they're still working kinks out of it. They don't even know how to work the kinks out of it yet. Like, and on top of that, they're basically just trying to tell you that there is no kinks. Like, come on, you know, like, don't BS me here. So I'd say that aftermarket, you're gonna have so much more on the Gixxer, and the maintenance, it's gonna be better on the Gixxer. So it's kind of hard to give the win to the Sportster S in that department right there, just simply because of that. And it makes a big difference. That was one of the reasons why I got rid of my bike. There's nothing I could really do to it, and I wanted to go faster. And I've seen videos where people went ahead and they tuned the bike from the one tuner that was out there that I've seen or found out about. I didn't want to do the tune on the bike because I didn't want to void my warranties, and I was already having some issues, so why would I void my warranty knowing I have issues? But they said that, I think the video said it got up to 168, 178, one of the two, which is damn fast. And that doesn't surprise me much, because if it wasn't for that limiter, I'd almost say, you know, in the speed department, they would be pretty comparable to each other. Because I'm telling you what, that Sportster S rips, man. In sport mode, it is a monster, and it's pretty crazy. And the difference between the two really is going to be in that this Sportster S has got that mid-range, that low mid-range, while as the Gixxer is going to have the mid-high range. All right, and for our next topic here, we're going to go over the performance, which I was just touching on a little bit. And the first thing I want to say is how that puts the power down, which Honestly, they put the power down in completely different ways from each other, but they're both really fast bikes. The Sportster S is gonna feel like a rocket right out the hole, and that's because it's built for a low to mid-end punch, and that works real well with the dual cylinder engine it's got there, right? So since it's a twin, it's gonna really pack that punch real fast. It's gonna get there real fast, and it's going to produce a lot of torque doing it. So they really got a low to mid-end punch that's really phenomenal. I'm not going to lie. I mean, that bike makes you want to drive like an asshole, just like the Gixxer makes me want to drive like an asshole. And the Gixxer, she's going to have a mid to a high end. So right out the hole, the Gixxer isn't going to necessarily just rip on you. You're gonna have to build them RPMs up, and after you get the RPMs up, then that bike it's really fucking getting right. So you're really not gonna get much power until you get midway through, and that's why I say it's about a mid to a high end. You know, when you're up there on top, the bike's screaming and it's got all its power. That's where it's made to be. It's meant to be ridden at the edge, and that is a whole different style of riding than a low to mid-end range there, because in the low to mid-end you're going to be taking off and you're probably going to blast up to that 100, maybe 120, and on the Gixxer you start getting up to that 100 and you're just now starting to play around. I mean, don't get me wrong, in first gear you hit it and you're fucking moving, right? I can at least be doing every bit of 100 by the time I get on the highway, super easy, just like on the Sportster S. But the big difference between the two is that, you know, you really have to work for it a little bit more on the Gixxer opposed to the Sportster S to get there because of the low end punch. But when you're out there on the highways, which is a lot of the stuff I like to do, if you're out there doing highway racing, or you know, you're just really liking to run the piss out the bike, the Gixxer is going to make you feel better because you're going to be able to hang in it for longer. You know, it feels like it's definitely built for it. Even though I didn't have no problems with the high RPMs on the Sportster S because of the VVTi, you know, I can't lie, up on top, I'm pretty sure that the Sportster S would get beaten by the Gixxer. But if we were going from like a dig and I didn't really have time to get them revs up there, honestly, that Sportster S is going to eat you out the hole. I mean, it's super torquey, and honestly, I love how they did the bike. It's just some of the other issues just make it kind of a pain. So I thought that was a pretty interesting thing, because they're both really fast and they're both going to make you feel, you know, alive, let's say, whenever you ride them. But where you're going to feel the power at is going to be completely different on one versus the other. So the best way I just like to look at it is you know, it really does got that torque, that low end punch that can rip you off the face, and up top it starts to run out of a little bit of steam, but it's not as bad as something like my Street Bob here. But you know, the Gixxer is just getting started when you start getting up into them ranges. You know, one thing I definitely wanted to add for in the performance section here is Harley dropped the ball big time when it comes to where they put the foot placement on the Sportster S. I almost forgot to talk about it, right? And it was one of the biggest gripes I had, and I'll touch a little bit when I go into my next section too on this. But having your feet placed forward in front of you like this, like you're sitting in a damn clamshell, makes no sense when it comes to a performance bike. While as the Gixxer, your feet are set behind you so you can sit and lean into it and tuck in. So that's one thing I wanted to talk about a little bit right there that I almost forgot to talk about. And for the looks department, which is what's going to be our next topic here, this one's where it kind of gets a little bit subjective, because in some ways, some of the things that make the Sportster S good are some of the things that takes away from it. The fat front tire, it robs it on performance so bad. You can move around the GSXR so much better at speeds because that smaller front tire. That almost makes up for it right there. You know, you're just able to move the bike around so much better that it's ridiculous, you know what I mean? And that makes for a pretty big thing. But that big front tire on the front of that fucking Sportster, it looks good on it. I will give it. It does look good on it. But it prevents it from actually being able to do the sport things that it really wants it to do. Or maybe that's just how they get the stable highway speeds out of that bike, because it was super stable at high speeds. When I had it at 120, definitely felt stable as shit, but you're just not getting around and moving around a bunch. You're not going to be cutting it up as easy and shit like that. And I mean, that's kind of a thing to me. And I feel like they did it just purely for looks, and that kind of just bums me out, because honestly, the bike would have looked decent with a skinnier front tire, and if they would have put the skinnier front tire up there, it would have definitely helped the bike perform a whole lot better than what it already does. So honestly, I don't think it was worth it for the looks, you know, and that's definitely why they did it too. And if you like sport bikes, man, it's kind of hard to go wrong with the GSXR. I hate to say it, they've been around for so long. It's your stereotypical sport bike look, and it's pretty typical. While as the Sportster S is really kind of radical compared to everything before it, honestly. It shares the Sportster name, but looks nothing like a Sportster. And honestly, let's just be honest, it performs nothing like a Sportster too. It's just fast as shit, other than the fact that the Sportster used to be Harley's fast bike, you know. But I'd have to say, while that front tire robs it, it does look good on the bike. I will admit it. It looks good on the bike, but I just don't think it was worth it performance-wise for sure. And so I'll kind of have to give it to it. The Sportster S on the looks department, it looks really, really good, you know, but man, it's different. It's different. You kind of have to, I don't know, like that style of bike, which I unfortunately do. It kind of looks like a naked bike a little bit, which is what I kind of compared it around a lot to. So if you like naked bikes, you might really be into it. So it just kind of is what it is in the style department there. But I think it definitely takes it style wise, because it's just so much different and you don't see it around very much. I occasionally get people say that the GSXR looks nice. I mean, very occasionally. But I tell you what, every time I parked somewhere on that Sportster S, I had somebody make a comment to tell me how good it looked, and they just wanted to know about it. You know, they was really curious about the bike. So I'd have to say, with looks, man, it's kind of hard to beat that Sportster S right there. Everybody just is curious about the thing and they want to know. And for my next section here, we're gonna go over the comfortability of the bikes, because let's be honest, that does matter. When it comes to picking out a sporty bike, I don't think it matters as much, but oddly enough, I will have to give it to the GSXR here in being more comfortable. And it's simply because of where your feet are placed, man. With having your feet placed forward, wow, what is going on up here? There is a lot of vehicles coming right at me, boys. They're going insano mode.
Surprise, motherfucker.
What up, dudes? Apparently I'm missing out, huh? They're doing wheelies and everything. Hell yeah. They're riding good. Anyway, sorry. Back to before that happened. Comfortability wise, having your feet in front of you, it just really sucks, man. It really does. So honestly, I think that right there just killed it. And for performance wise, it makes no sense too, because if you're being pulled off the back of the bike, you know, you got all that torque going on, which the Sportster has plenty of. Dude, how are you holding yourself in? If you've looked at the back of the bike, it's just like barely a little bit of a hump that keeps your butt from sliding off. I mean, it doesn't do much. I slid off of it. Didn't slide off onto the tire, but my butt slid up onto that thing plenty of times when riding the bike. And the fact of the matter is, I would have loved to have mids on the bike so that I could hold myself, at least have some kind of comfortability. Not to mention the fact that having your feet up there is a very uncomfortable way to sit for long amounts of time. And while I get having them positioned behind you is a little uncomfortable too, because we did some longer rides not too long ago on the GSXR, sorry, but it was still a whole lot more comfortable than on the Sportster S. You know, I could definitely see myself oddly doing a longer distance on that GSXR than on the Sportster S, simply because of where your feet stuck out. It's competition with stuff like I think it was the Ducati Diavolo and shit like that. You know, those are some fast bikes. If they had just stuck mids and a smaller front tire on that Sportster S, I'm telling you, it'd have been so much more comfortable to ride. Free-spirited, let me say, because being able to do stuff like this matters, especially whenever you're moving speed. You know, it feels like my street bob can outmaneuver my Sportster S. You know, so if you ask me, comfortability wise, I'm more comfortable on the GSXR than I am the Sportster S, and that's kind of surprising, because I always thought the GSXR was going to be the uncomfortable, you know, breed, let me put it that way, just simply because of the fact that it's a sport bike. And you know, why would a cruiser be less comfortable than a sport bike? But I was wrong, so I have to definitely say that, you guys. And for our last topic here, we're gonna go over fit and finish of both the bikes here. And there was some things that I ran into on that Sportster S that kind of just didn't make sense. So I already complained about it, but the front tire and the placement of your feet, there was staples in the seat that were from factory that rubbed against the tank paint from factory, and it ruined the paint on the tank. The bar locks down there that keep it from swinging too far and accidentally hitting the tank or something weird like that. Literally in the first like 5 days of having the bike, and I don't slam my bikes around when I'm parking them or anything weird like that. It broke off. One of the metal pieces that stopped it, one of the metal stoppers, literally just broke off. Like, what the heck, you know what I mean? And like I said, I am gentle with, I was definitely even gentle with that bike, but I'm gentle with the bikes regardless. You know, when it comes to moving around and stuff like that, I don't just beat on my bike. Of course, I rip on them, yeah, but I don't just beat on them, you know what I mean? I'm not just abnormally rough with the bike just to be abnormally rough with the bike. So it was really odd to have that break on me, and especially it being a brand new bike, you know. Why? You know, what's up with the process that they're doing the steel with, that it was so weak that it broke. And the fact that there's issues with the bike, like the battery issue. They knew this from the beginning, that the battery that's originally in the bike, it's almost just too weak. If it loses any, like, it degrades too much at all, like almost any at all, from what I heard. You know, it loses any voltage whatsoever. It almost just won't start the fucking bike. I had that issue a lot because the bike wouldn't start. I mean, I would have to try to start the bike sometimes 2 or 3 different times to get to start. It just wouldn't start. I mean, brand new $15,000, $16,000 bike, having trouble starting for dumb reasons, and then it was to find out it was because the battery is just a weak, shitty battery that they stuck in it, and it doesn't like that apparently. You know, stuff like that they knew about. They should have fixed this before setting the bike out. They set the bike out at a very high price premium, so those things should have been R&D'd out. Well, as whenever you're looking at the Gixxer, you know, the research and development has been there for a while. They've had a really long time to work that bike out. So if you're buying a brand new Gixxer nowadays, dude, you're buying a real solid bike. The platform's been around forever at this fucking point. Everybody and their mom has had one. So all the problems that would have come about with them has already been figured out by everybody else besides you. So the fixes have already been put out there by probably multiple different companies and shit like that. So any of the issues you do run with on the Gixxers, they're going to be super easy to fix. But the deal with it now is they're so far along, you're probably not going to run into any big issues on the Gixxers anymore. They're just so many of them, and they've been produced for so long. You know, they've been making them and ironing that bike out for quite a while now, and because of that, they've got a very solid, performing, stable bike that is just all around a great bike. And it's hard to beat that right there, especially when it comes to a performance bike where you're constantly beating it up. I mean, they just are good at doing it, while as Harley right now is having to work all that shit out, you know. And some of it they knew about from the beginning, so there's really not an excuse, you know. And there's some issues I've heard with some of the older Gixxers, like what I have right now. I have an 07. Something like the rectifiers like to burn out on them. They get hot where they're stuck at from stock on the bike. But check this out, the guy I got the bike from had already fixed that kind of stuff on the bike, you know. So that's nice. I'm fortunate with that. But you know, they found out about that. That's kind of a little thing compared to some of the shit, I guess, that's going on with the Sportster S. There's been people who just, they can't find out what's wrong with it, or just every issue that comes up is just a nightmare to handle. While as on the Gixxer, it's just not. It's just a tried and true bike. But again, like I said, a lot of that has to do with the fact that the bike's been around for a lot longer. There's been a lot of more research and development done on the bike, so that has a big part to play in it. But I would still say, fit and finish wise, I'm going with that Gixxer over the Sportster S. I'm sorry, they've just had a lot more time to deal with it, and they've actually remedied some of their issues. And with the Sportster S's, they're all still having the same issues from the very first time they came around to now. So the 2021 models and shit like that are still having the issues, or sorry, the 2020 models are still having the same issues that the 2024 models and 2023 models are probably having. So if you ask me, it's just not up there with it. But if you like this video, you guys, like, comment, subscribe, let me know what y'all think. I hope y'all enjoyed this content, and peace out, you guys.